Do you ever find yourself wondering why some hikers just glide down the trail, whereas others seem to be struggling with every single step? Well, why would that be? Maybe it's the footwear. Well, stick around as I show you how to choose your hiking footwear and then how to look after it for your next hiking adventure. Hi everyone, Mauser here. Welcome back to the channel. Now, I've been on the trail for over 30 years as a guide and as just a recreational hiker here in Australia, and I have worn a lot of footwear over that time. And while some consider choosing hiking footwear to be a bit of a dark art, it's one we're sort of going to try and demystify a bit today. Get ready to learn some tips, some tricks that will help you choose your perfect hiking footwear. Now, whether you are a seasoned adventurer or you're just a beginner, a newbie, just starting out trying to demystify this whole hiking scenario, having the right hiking footwear can make or break your experience while you're out on the trail. I know over the years I have had some absolute shockers when I have been out on trips. I have been 45 minutes into a 5-day hike and had massive blisters on my ankles. I have broken ankles, I have had blisters again, and these were some painful lessons. But not to worry. In this video we're going to cover all the essential questions. What type of shoe is best for your feet and the terrain you'll be hiking in? How do you find the perfect fit? Well, let's try and answer some of those questions. Let's get into it. Let's look at hiking footwear. So, hiking and running footwear is something that I have had an interest in for a very long time. And when I started to make this video, when I started to go through all my hiking shoes to show you a few examples, I started to realize that maybe I have a footwear fetish. And as my wife often lets me know, I have an awful lot of shoes. Trail runners, road runners, hiking boots, hiking shoes, hiking sandals, you name it, I've got it. The advantage of this is that I have tried out many hiking shoes and boots over my 30+ year career. So we'll go through a few examples, but first up, let's go through all the different types of hiking footwear, the most common ones I see out on the trail. So first up, we've got your low or mid-cut hiking shoes. So there's a pair of Salomon X Ultras, a new one for one of my kids. They are a good hiking shoe that I've used over the years, and like it says, they are a shoe, they are not a boot. These are made for walking and trekking in. These are a very sturdy shoe, a bit stiffer in the sole, and these ones, while not Gore-Tex, are quite breathable, quite well ventilated through this fabric here, and they are relatively lightweight when you compare them to something like boots. And I have always liked shoes, hiking shoes like this for day walks, and just when I'm traveling, I like a hiking shoe like that sometimes. If I'm not wearing a trail runner, I would probably opt for something like that. And the advantage of a low cut shoe like that, it's relatively lightweight, and it's also reasonably durable when you compare it to a trail runner. And well, in terms of disadvantages, well, if you're on a long trek where you're not going to be coming to civilization for a long time, some people might question the durability of these. I actually find them really durable. They're a strong shoe. I wouldn't really hesitate to take them on, a 7 to 10 day walk on a trail. That wouldn't worry me at all. You can wear them with gaiters as well, but not a bad option. My only issue with Salomons in recent years has been that it just doesn't fit my foot as well anymore, hence I don't wear them anymore. And if you don't really want to wear a shoe, then you have something like a mid sort of style boot like this one. This is the La Sportiva Ultra Raptor 2, and this is called a mid. It's like a sneaker, but in kind of like a boot. Very lightweight still. This one has got nubuck leather on it, so it's not as breathable, but it is more resistant to sort of mud and water penetration getting in, and it's a very comfortable lightweight boot if you're wanting something that is not the full sort of rigor of a boot, but still offers something that is fairly lightweight and comfortable on the foot. And I generally have this one for day walks and for shorter trips where I am wanting something that's going to protect the foot. If there's a bit of scrub, that sort of thing, I can still wear this and have good foot protection, knowing it's going to sort of survive the trip. But that's sort of one that I like to take when I'm going on a quick sort of day trip with a bit of mud, bit of stuff like that. And these shoes I am showing today, I'm not recommending them, though they're just the ones that I have. We'll talk about sort of finding your perfect shoe seam. These are just examples to show you the different types of boots and shoes. From the sort of low cut trekking shoes and the mids like we've looked at there, we move up to the more sturdy, the more traditional high cut boots. And again, these come in different options and are made from varying types of fabrics and stuff. First up, we've got like a synthetic boot. This is just a heftier version of that La Sportiva sort of thing. This is a Scarpa boot made with nubuck leather, very much heavier than those previous boots. You really notice the weight difference in these, and that is one disadvantage of hiking boots, is that they are very heavy on the feet. A lot of people, the old wives' tale, I guess it is, that people say, an extra kilo on your foot's worth an extra 2 or 3 on your back, something like that. I've heard that mentioned before. Certainly does make a difference when you're hiking and you've got to wear heavy boots. These are an old pair that I had back in the day. So these ones have a Gore-Tex layer in them, which it means that they are, while they're waterproof, you'll probably find that your feet sweat a bit in these because they don't breathe that well. Even though it's Gore-Tex, I find that boots with Gore-Tex don't breathe as well. So the disadvantage there is that your feet can sweat in the boot, especially if you're using them in hot conditions. I wouldn't really recommend a Gore-Tex boot if you're out in the desert or somewhere like that, because your feet are going to get sweat and get very wet just from perspiration. And generally boots, higher cut boots like this, or these are a Salomon boot, they're good for those long treks when you've got to carry a heavy load, which is why I tend to, on my big trips, generally always wear boots, because I'm carrying generally heavy loads for 10 days to 13 days at a time, where we're not in civilization or we're just out camping the entire time, carrying everything on our backs. And in those cases, I definitely prefer a boot over a shoe. So yeah, there are a couple of my sort of synthetic pairs that I've had over the years. These Salomon 4D GTX or something they're called. And while we're talking about the high cut boots, well, then you move into the sort of full grain leather boot. And these are your absolute army tank boot while you're on the trail. So these are my latest sort of high cut boot in the full grain leather. These are the Lova. They say it lower on their own website here in Australia, but this is a German brand of boot, full leather, extremely sturdy. Vibram. I say Vibram. A lot of people say Vibram. Vibram soles. I love a Vibram sole. Extremely sturdy boots, and this is what I took on my recent 9-day trek into remote wilderness, untracked, extremely rough terrain, extremely scrubby. And I mean, when we're doing trips like that here in Tasmania or in Australia, I know some people say, no, trail runners are all the go, but when you come to Tasmania and you're in off-track terrain, boots, I think, are a must, and these ones certainly live it up to the promise of protecting the feet here in Tasmania in Australia. They are a great boot, but I wouldn't be wearing them in the height of summer in the heat. Your feet will sweat like no one's business in these things, but they offer the protection. They are waterproof. I wore these for 9 days. My feet didn't get wet, and we were in some pretty crazy terrain and rain and mud and scrub, and they absolutely worked a treat for me in those conditions. So while they're great for protecting the feet, they are a lot heavier, they are a lot stiffer, and they take a lot longer to break in. You need to wear these around quite a bit prior to taking them on a trek. You need to walk in them, you need to condition them, treat them, do all that sort of stuff, so they will suit your feet when you're out in the trail. Then next we probably move on to one of the more popular choices in this day and age, and that is trail running shoes. Many people now are wearing trail running shoes when they're out on longer treks, and having done a lot of trail running in the past and still doing a bit now, I absolutely love trail runners. It's basically what I live in every day. I'm always got sneakers on or trail runners. I have a couple of pairs of road shoes, but the majority of my massive sneaker collection is trail runners. And I've got a few favorites, but trail runners vary greatly. They're a low cut shoe, and a lot of the time what I've found in the past is I tend to stick with certain brands because I found that is what fits my feet best. I've tried most of the brands over the years, and these days I tend to stick with Nike trail runners. They're getting better every year. I'm a big fan. This is an earlier version of the Wild Horse. This is the Wild Horse 7 by Nike, and you can see there the grip there wasn't that great. It was an issue I had with Nike shoes was the grip, very slippery, and I found it wasn't well. They were trying to develop their own sort of outsole on the bottom there, but in more recent times they have developed the Wild Horse, which is one of my favourite ones. That's the Wild Horse 8 there, the current version, a lot grippier than this one, and I have had no troubles with the Wild Horse 8. I have travelled with that overseas extensively and done a lot of day walks in these and find them really good. But also the Nike shoes these days, the newer versions, and this is probably with the Wild Horse, probably my favourite pair of Nikes is the Nike Zagama, and this is their this has only just been released, these ones, but this is the Zagama with the Vibram sole, and I was so happy when I saw they released Vibram soles on Nike shoes. You've also got my racing pair of Nikes, the Ultrafly, which also have Vibram sole, Vibram. I love both these shoes. They are awesome. My new favorite pairs of shoes, and I will be using them on day walks as well. It's something it's a prerequisite for me. Basically, any hiking footwear I wear has to have the Vibram. This is what I prefer. In addition to that, you do have other trail runners like the Saucony Peregrines. Great shoe back in the day that I used to race in a lot. Haven't worn these much lately, but really good grip on them. That didn't have the Vibram sole, but I found it was perfectly fine. Anyway, good shoes. The advantages of trail running shoes is that they are very light. They drain water away really well. So they're quite thin, so you can be going through mud and rain, that sort of thing, especially when I'm in a race or something. Your feet will get wet, but it doesn't really matter when you're on a shorter trip because it drains straight off. They dry pretty quickly. And with most trail shoes, you really don't need to break them in. You can put them on, go straight for a run, straight for a walk, and generally not have any trouble. But one thing I have found over the years, I have suffered a broken ankle on a hike once before. I have found since that time my ankle rolls a bit easier, and I found certain shoes just don't suit my feet these days. They roll easily in some shoes, which is why I stick generally with the Nikes now, because I don't have any troubles with them when I'm running or walking. But trail runners these days, generally what you see a lot of people out on trails, especially the well-formed tracks like the Overland track here in Tasmania. I have no qualms about heading out on well-formed tracks with trail runners. Then you come down to your other piece of footwear choice for hiking, and which is not that common here in Australia, but it is sort of sandals and this sort of thing, which you might want to wear in a dry climate where it's very hot. I have worn them occasionally when we are wading through lagoons and up rivers and up places like that near coastlines. I've found them quite useful for that, where you don't want to have your boots just soaking wet on your feet, or your shoes soaking wet on your feet. So that's where they have come in good. Again, these are my Bedrock sandals, which I generally just wear in the summer when I'm just walking around. I take them on the odd walk, but I haven't used them that much to walk in. I prefer a shoe or something like that. But these are a good sandal, the Bedrock with the Vibram sole. That's an old Tiva pair that I've had for many years there, which are a great walking sort of sandal, a bit more protected, offer a bit more coverage around the feet. I don't know many people that are hiking in sandals, but I know people do. So that is your different types of trail footwear, your different varieties of shoes and boots and sandals. So let's talk about the next sort of thing in choosing hiking footwear, and that is keeping your feet dry. Now, moisture is your enemy on the trail. Wet feet are uncomfortable and a recipe for blisters and infection. So here's a few tips on how to keep your feet dry. So if you're in hot weather, if you're hiking in the heat a lot, choose a shoe or a boot that is going to give you breathability. All of these mesh and synthetic fabrics are going to let your foot breathe a lot better than some of those thick leather shoes and boots will. And what I tend to do, sometimes if I'm hiking in boots and it's summer and I'm in the mountains, I'm wearing the boots because I'm carrying a big load, that sort of thing. At lunchtime and at break stops, I will take my boots off and let my socks air out a bit. I'll even hang socks off the back of the pack and put a dry pair on if that is becoming an issue. Then the socks can dry out and I can sort of switch them in and out as I'm going along. I don't have to do that very often, but it's something to consider. The socks I wear now are the, what are they called? The Silverlight socks are the ones I've been wearing lately and really love them. They dry out quickly. They tend to, if they get a bit moist, they just tend to dry out very quickly. They keep my feet warm. They breathe well. They're not that thick and are a good sock option. And while we're talking about socks, the other option, if it is wet out on the track a lot, if you're going through a lot of water, sort of, ankle deep water, then you can look at things like waterproof socks. And I have got Sealskins socks. I've used them for over a decade on and off. I don't use them all the time, occasionally these days, but they are very good at wicking sort of sweat and moisture away, and they're also got this protective barrier inside them, so if you're walking through wet sort of terrain, they will keep your feet dry. There are other brands as well. The only one I have tried is the Sealskins socks, which are quite a well-known brand. The other tip is to wear gaiters when it is wet and when it is raining. When you're going through lots of water, gaiters do make a big difference. If you get that nice tight fit between the boot and the gaiter, then water, when you can walk sort of through water up to your calf, I find, and it won't get into my boots unless I sort of hold my foot in the water for a while. And I did go into gaiters on another video where you can view that up there, where I went into my favorite gaiters and how I use them. So when you're considering what trip you're going on, and you want to keep your feet dry, really think about the terrain you're going through, what the weather's going to be like, big factor, and consider that when making your footwear choice for the trip you're heading out on. Obviously, one of the most crucial factors when deciding your hiking footwear is to choose the perfect fit. Choose the perfect fit, sizing and comfort. Perfect fit is key to comfortable hiking footwear, and choosing the right pair of hiking shoes, I have found, is rarely a straightforward process. Everyone has differently shaped feet, so what works for me may not work for you, and it may not work for another person. It's all sort of individualized, it's different for every single person. But I do have a few tips that you can use when trying to size up your feet for footwear. Now, generally, I tell people to avoid buying footwear online unless you're buying, I've been wearing Nikes for years. I can confidently buy them from the Nike website now, knowing that they should fit my feet. I do have the advantage there that companies like that allow you to return stuff for exchange if it doesn't fit. So that is something to take into account as well. I know that Lower, they offer a return thing as well. So if you order it off their website, you can return it within 30 days and exchange it. But you do really need to try it on before you buy. You need to go into a hiking store, you need to put the footwear on, walk around in it, and really get a feel for it and how it feels on the foot. And when you are in the store trying it on, take some socks with you that you would normally take hiking. Can't recommend that enough. I normally just put my hiking socks on, go to the store, and then I can try them on with that very pair of socks that I would go hiking in to see what the feel of the boot or shoe is like. And one of the mistakes I have made over the years, my foot has changed shape a little over the years, and what I found works for me now is that a wider shoe, so I'll get the wide size in my shoe or boot, where the toe box has a lot more wriggle room for my toes and feet, and I'm not as restricted in that toe box. That has been a game changer for me with my hiking boots and with my shoes. And with something like the Nike Ultraflies here, they've got quite a wide toe box, which I love. Your toes have just got room to splay and spread out, and they're not sort of constricted like I've had in the past with other shoes. But when you're trying them on, you generally want to have about a thumb's width at the back of the foot, or a good method to test shoes is to take the inner sole out, put your foot on it, and generally you want about a thumb width at the tip of the toe, between the tip of the toe and the insole is a general rule of thumb, and then that's sort of how you get the feet the right fit. I do use insoles in my boots just because I got a slightly bigger pair of boots, so I had plenty of room in there for my foot, and I put an insole in there to just get it just to the right level of tightness around the foot. And I have found with those newer boots that I've got that it works really well for me. You also want to ensure that you can get a nice tight sort of fit in the boot in terms of lacing it up. So you can trial different lacing techniques. There are heaps of different lacing techniques for keeping a boot secure around the ankle and around the foot. And also remember that your feet may swell while you're hiking. When you're on the trail all day, putting in the kilometres, putting in the miles, you may get a bit of swelling in the foot, so you kind of need to take that into account as well. Big mistake I made with a pair of boots a few years ago was that I bought one that was fairly tight fitting in the store, and what I found is that my feet were terrible in those boots. When I was out on the trail, my feet swelled up a bit and I was getting blisters, I was getting rubbing, it was an awful experience. Those boots didn't really come on many trips with me at all. I ended up selling them. So that is really something to take into account when you are putting on the boots. And I really struggled when I bought these ones a year or so ago. I felt they were a bit loose, but I'm really glad I went with something a little bit looser. And then I bought the insoles to put inside because they are just a super comfy boot to walk in now. Really enjoy them for those big sort of expeditions I go on. And when you are doing that initial sizing up of the boot, make sure you measure the foot correctly. The boot manufacturers have sizing guides on their websites. Generally, you can do a trace of your foot on a bit of paper on the floor and then sort of do some measurements and get an idea of what your size will be. Or if you're in a store, you can use their foot measuring device thing. You know what I mean? Another factor to consider when you've made your purchase is breaking in your boots, if you've got boots. If you've got shoes, you don't really need to break them in. If you've got the trail shoes, trail runners, you don't really need to break them in. If you've got something like this, I would recommend doing a bit of walking around in them. They're a bit stiffer and tighter. If you're going with a trail walking shoe, definitely recommend sort of breaking them in a little bit and if you are going with the boot, with the leather boot, you need to be wearing them in for, I think, weeks beforehand. You really need to get some kilometers into them before you go wearing them on a big trip. And what I would normally tell people to do if they're buying leather boots like that is take them home from the store. A lot of stores will let you return them as long as you just wear them around in your house and you don't wear them outside. If you wear them around over a couple of days and sort of get a feel for them and you think they're not quite right, return them, try a different size, do that. Then after you're sure you've got the right size, you can start wearing them outside for shorter walks and gradually breaking them in. And if you find there's any little niggly bits where you're getting any rubbing at all, then get onto that straight away. I went into that on a blister video up here where I gave some helpful tips on how to prevent rubbing and skin shear, that sort of thing. So do check that video out as well, because that will complement this one quite well. And I can hear some of you saying, well, look, trail shoes is the only way to go. You only wear trail shoes. But look, here in Tasmania, in Australia, we've got some crazy, crazy terrain, and it's not like some of the through hikes and stuff you do around the world. It is here, when you head out, you are out by yourself on your own for the entire trip. And that's why I have generally worn boots for most of my career, because I can rely on them. I've never had a pair of good boots break on me out on the trail, whereas I have had sneakers fall apart on me before. So that is generally why I talk a lot about boots here. So understand totally, through hiking, you want to be in trail runners, you want to be in trail shoes, much better option. Then finally, in terms of caring for your boots, care and maintenance, extending your footwear's lifespan. And taking care of your hiking footwear is crucial for its longevity. Obviously, boots are leather boots and things, they're going to require a bit more care than your regular trail runner or trail shoe. And I'll give a link below to the Lower website, who have some great tips on caring for leather boots and maintaining them and cleaning them. But basically what I do after a walk is, on most of my shoes, I will brush any dirt off with a brush, even rinse them out with a bit of water, especially with my trail runners. On a muddy trip with them after a race or something like that, I'll just get the hose into them and really rinse them out, give them a good wash, and then just let them dry, not in direct sunlight. I'll just let them dry over a day or two outside, maybe longer for boots. You probably want to give them 5 or 6 days, and then I will treat them, leather boots, with a bit of a treatment. I'll remove the insoles so I can give them a good rinse out and let them dry completely before putting them away. And another important tip I have found over the years is to make sure you sort of, especially with boots, wear them, you know, sort of once every month or two if you're not out hiking, because what I find if you don't do that is that the soles can degrade, they can come a bit flaky, they're just, you know, when rubber or plastic gets that sort of texture to it that doesn't feel like, it feels like it's perishing. And good examples in something like these trail runners, which I have not worn for a long time, it's all sort of starting to flake away a bit. There's bits going on there, and it's just got that very slippery feel to what it originally felt like. It almost feels brittle. Because I haven't worn those ones for a very long time. These are just a garden pair of shoes now, but yeah, just got to watch out for that as well, and make sure you're trying to wear them semi-regularly. What is happening there, what they call that process of the boot rubber degrading, is hydrolysis. Just something to be aware of. So what final tips in sort of deciding on your footwear can I suggest? Well, most importantly, match your hiking footwear to your hiking style and the conditions you're going to be facing. Consider the foot shape. Consider brands of footwear that cater to your foot shape and your arch size, all that sort of thing, which is why I would recommend first going to a store. If you haven't bought much footwear before for hiking, go in a store, try a few different pairs on, get an idea of what your foot is suited to. Look at comfort, prioritize comfort, and try multiple pairs of shoes on so you can get the right ones for you. Also consider your budget. I tend to find that if I pay a little bit more for a good pair of shoes, they tend to last a bit longer, and I find them to be comfier, all that sort of stuff. Having said that, there are some good budget options out there as well. But make sure you try a wide range of footwear on before you make your final decision. So final tip, get out there, go to your local store, try on a bunch of shoes, and don't settle on a pair until you find one that feels like it was made just for your feet. And once you've found your dream pair of shoes, make sure you look after them and you care for them so they'll last you as long as possible. Go and have a look at some shoes, check them out. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. So if you've decided on a pair of boots, pair of shoes, whatever you've decided on, get out in the trail. But before you do that, check out this video where I go into hiking blisters, what causes them, how to treat them and how to prevent them, and you'll be all set to go out on your next hike. See you later.